We have some more NHL signings to discuss today, including players from the Nashville Predators, Winnipeg Jets, Vegas Golden Knights, and others. We'll get into all the latest coming up next. So welcome back to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some more breaking news from around the NHL. We have some more NHL signings to discuss today. And today's not just RFAs, we actually have a UFA signing as well. And let's start there with the Vegas Golden Knights signing unrestricted free agent defenseman Deryk Engelland. Of course, Engelland's been with Vegas over the past 2 years since they've been a franchise in the NHL. And he's been an unrestricted free agent since July the 1st. We heard rumors a few weeks ago, and I believe I mentioned in a video, that he had agreed to terms on a new contract, but we've never had an official announcement. Now, of course, we also just recently saw a trade between Vegas and Toronto, with the Vegas Golden Knights unloading that David Clarkson contract, going back to Toronto in exchange for Garrett Sparks. Of course, they also sent a 4th-round pick along with the Clarkson deal as well. So obviously that created some much needed cap space for Vegas. So then right after the trade, it was also announced on the Engelland signing here. So it's a 1-year contract for a league minimum $700K, but there are some performance bonuses in there as well. He can actually earn an additional $800,000. So the potential value of the contract could be $1.5 million. I don't have all the fine details on what the bonus structure is, but there is another $800,000 worth of bonuses that can be earned. More than likely, it's around games played, could be around team performance, around where they finish in the standings, make the playoffs, that type of thing. Usually with a player of his magnitude, it's probably not really geared too much around offense or anything like that. So I guess we'll wait for further detail on what those bonuses could be, but either way, Engelland is officially under contract with Vegas for the coming season. One of the more significant signings we've seen here in the last little bit was the Nashville Predators inking Colton Sisson to a 7-year contract extension valued at $2.857 million. Now, this is a pretty significant signing for the Nashville Predators. It's a little bit surprising to see Sisson, who's basically a bottom 6 forward, get that much term. Of course, we recently saw another player who's kind of similar, Brandon Tanev, getting a 6-year contract from the Pittsburgh Penguins as an unrestricted free agent. But this really isn't all that unusual for Nashville. It looks as though David Poile, really for quite some time now, has been very fond of those long-term contracts. They have several players, mostly in the forward group and a few defensemen as well, inked to long-term deals. It's been a long time since we've really seen a whole lot in the way of shorter-term contracts for the Predators. If you're identified as a player that the Predators like and see being a longer-term member of the team, then they certainly want to lock you up longer term. Looking at the other guys on the team that have these long-term contracts, in the forward group, of course, they just signed Matt Duchene to that 7-year deal. They got Ryan Johansson on a long-term contract. There's Kyle Turris. Kalle Järnkrok was signed fairly long-term. Philip Forsberg, Victor Arvidsson. They got Ryan Ellis on a long-term contract. Matthias Ekholm had signed a longer-term deal as well. There's rumored to be a big-time extension coming for Roman Josi as well. That has not officially been announced as of yet, so I'm not sure where negotiations stand on that, but he's their captain, one of their most important players, so I'm sure they will get that done. But obviously a lot of these players really like playing in Nashville. Obviously the taxes are friendly there, so they like that, but they really like the environment, the city, the team, and really the whole aspect of being a Predator and living and being a part of that community. So this shows the commitment from the players to the team in the area in return here. But at the same time, I do have some concerns over locking up this many players longer term. I do understand Poile's approach in wanting to buy up some unrestricted free agent years and really want his team set for the longer term. It really provides a lot of benefits in the way of projected future spending when it comes to the salary cap. At the same time, though, it really does take away a lot of roster flexibility, which you do need. Personally, I think it's a great idea to have a good mixture and have like your core guys, your top 4 or 5 players, maybe at most, locked up to long-term contracts. And then you have a lot of other surrounding supporting cast, with that mid-range to shorter-term contracts. You can mix in some entry-level deals to kind of level everything out. But that's my approach. But obviously, David Poile likes locking everybody up longer term here. But if you take a look at Colton Sisson, he also had a career year last year, putting up 15 goals and 15 assists. He's still relatively young at 25 years old. So thankfully, this contract only takes him to about age 32. So obviously, we usually do see players start to decline a few years before that. So the last couple of years of the contract, really, if the play is not quite as strong as it is now, that's certainly to be expected to a degree and not too big of a deal. But my only concern with that career year is that really overall he had a chance to play up in the lineup due to injuries more often last year than he had in the past, and he really took advantage of it. So I do think he does have more offensive ability than most people might give him credit for, and he is a good player. I really am a fan of his game and think he can be a very valuable member of the Predators. So I don't want to give you the wrong idea that I don't like the contract. I think the money is more than fair for what he brings. He's also had some pretty good moments in the playoffs. Overall in his career, he's got 19 points in 51 playoff games. So even though he's not overly experienced, he's really been a regular for the past 3 years, but really they've had some good playoff runs, and he has contributed. I just really am concerned over the term. Like I said, personally, I think you should only have your absolute top players locked up longer term and have more of these bottom six guys and your third pair defensemen, backup goaltenders, all on shorter contracts so you have more flexibility to kind of have more moving parts if something doesn't work out. Obviously, having this many long-term contracts does pose some longer-term risk here in my opinion. Of course, as always, love to hear your thoughts on the Colton Sissons contract down in the comments. Let me know what you think. Did they go too long? Is he a player that deserves this kind of long-term contract? Or will this contract actually prove to be pretty valuable in the longer term here? We won't even be talking about this, saying how much of a steal it worked out to be for Nashville long term. The Colorado Avalanche have signed left shot defenseman Anton Lindholm, was originally a 2014 fifth round selection. It was a restricted free agent. The defenseman has signed a 1-year contract extension. So far in his career, he's got 62 games played, put up 4 assists, but mostly has played in the minor league. So another year for him to continue his development here with the Avalanche and see if he can find any more NHL experience. But given all the other younger, higher-end defensemen that are ahead of him on the Avalanche depth there, it's certainly going to prove very difficult for him to crack that lineup and really get much in the way of experience or games played, barring some kind of significant rash of injuries here. So for Lindholm's case, if he can continue to develop, maybe catch the attention of another NHL team, I would think for him to have any shot at being an NHL regular, if he's going to get there, it's going to have to be another organization, because this team is just too deep with solid young defensemen. Lastly here, the Winnipeg Jets have signed forward Andrew Copp to a 2-year contract extension that's been awarded through the salary arbitration process. They had their hearing here a few days ago, and he's been awarded a 2-year deal at $2.28 million. Andrew Copp's been a pretty solid bottom six forward for the Winnipeg Jets. Obviously, they lost another guy in Brandon Tanev to free agency who kind of worked well with him and were very important members of their bottom six roles. But Copp's a guy who can certainly stick around with them for a few more years. He will be a restricted free agent with arbitration rights here yet again at the end of this contract. So far, he's been proven to be a pretty decent 25 to 30 point player, so I really do like this contract for Winnipeg and Copp. I think it's more than fair. And if you take a look at some of the other bottom six guys, like Sissons that we just talked about, or his former teammate in Brandon Tanev, getting these big long terms, I really like this contract much better. This is much more, of my opinion, of what a solid bottom six player needs to be. Unfortunately, when you're in that role, I think they should be, mostly 2-3 year contracts or shorter. But I think the money's fair for what he brings. Now, an interesting note on salary arbitration, in case you're not aware, and I'm likely going to do a future video on this sometime here real soon. But if you take a look at the statistics, in the last decade, we've had 27 players actually go to arbitration. It's really quite amazing when you look at those cases, how many of those players actually end up being traded in a short period of time. So I really think these arbitration cases end up doing a lot of damage to the relationship between the team and the player. Of course, every year we hear of players and teams filing for the arbitration process, but like I said, a very high percentage of those end up being settled in contracts, coming to an agreement on well before that ever happens. So a lot of them don't actually make it to have their cases. You usually only get a handful of them every year, usually about 4 to 5 get settled on their own and don't make it. But 27 have gone through the process in the last decade. But out of the 27 cases, 13 of them were gone from their organization within 1 year, 16 out of 27 gone after 2 years, and 21 out of 27 gone after 3 years. So like I said, lots of high percentage of those players who ended up being traded or left the organization as a free agent as soon as they were able to. So that's not a good sign for any player who goes through this process. So just a heads up, something you might see here happen. Hopefully for Andrew Copp and the Winnipeg Jets, he's one of the few that doesn't happen to. He's a pretty valuable bottom six guy for them. But any other players you see going through this process here, it'll be interesting to look back in a few years' time to see if these statistics and these trends tend to continue here moving forward. But like I said, I'll have a video discussing that coming soon. Just wanted to give you some tidbits of information. That's the first salary arbitration case we've had so far this season, and I found that data rather interesting, so I thought I'd pass it on. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. I'll keep you all up to date with all breaking news from around the NHL. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.